Hello everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here, and today we're going to be talking about my collection of 2016, and this time it's going to be on the Nintendo 64, or what I would have liked them to called it was the Ultra 64, the project name, but anyways, I'm pretty sure you guys have probably noticed that we've been switching rooms back and forth. Well, I don't know, man, it's just fucking weird. Like, sometimes, I just have to go into, film in certain areas just because some areas are better during the day, some of them are better during night, it just depends. But either way, let's start beginning this video with talking about the ones from the number to Z. So this one over here is a classic one, and that is the 007 games. And let's talk about this one first, since this is the one that most people are probably flipping out over, but yes. This is 007 GoldenEye, which is, the one that's very infamous and all that kind of good stuff. In fact, this is actually the one that actually got me into wanting to watch the movies, because ever since I first played it, not only did I love the game at the time, but also I really wanted to watch all the movies, and the movie of this one was really fucking good. It's definitely one of my many favorite Bond films. But, yeah, while I do think this game is great, now, the controls in it definitely have not aged the greatest, especially compared to, first-person shooters with, nowadays, but for some reason, I can still play this game just fine. I don't know what it is, but I'm pretty sure I can probably understand if someone just started to play this game I don't know, last week or something, then yeah, I can understand being a little bit confused with the controls. But as for me though, I can get used to it just fine. But of course, it really is just fucking a weird time, man. And then as for this one, this is The World Is Not Enough. I'll be honest, for the most part, I think this is kind of a better game. Now, yeah, the music in it is definitely not nearly as good, but I think when it comes to the basic control, I think is a bit better, and the fact that, it pretty much has, more stuff to do, you get more gadgets and whatnot. But, yeah, also the movie that this one is based after is also not nearly as good either. But also the multiplayer in this one is also a little bit better, too, considering you can also add in, bots and stuff. But yeah, either way though, I think both these games are great for what they are. Next up we have is 1080, the good old arcade style snowboarding game. And this is actually a game I've had for a really long ass time. In fact, I remember when I first got this game, I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it because, I'm not really a huge fan of sport games, but this one was actually pretty awesome. I really liked it a whole lot, considering it wasn't super duper realistic there, but not only did I really like it back then, but I still really do enjoy it to this day. Next we have is Aero Gauge, and I remember I did a really old ass review on this game, and yeah, that review just wasn't really all that great, but honestly though, this game is kinda okay, I guess. It's definitely not nearly as good as what I was hoping it would have been, but it is still amusing fun, but it's not something I could play for hours and hours on end though. But I really do love the music in this game though. I really love that opening theme song. It's pretty awesome. Next up is a big favorite of mine, and that happens to be Banjo-Kazooie. And there's so much things I could say about this game, but to keep it short, I'll just say that, I really love all the different levels you get to go to. I love all the different abilities you get to learn. And of course, one of my many favorite things is that in a lot of ways, this is kind of an improvement over Mario 64, considering that, it has the same basic idea where, you're just traveling around in a castle as the hub world, but this time the castle was much more interesting because there's just so many different, weird layouts that were just, really crazy looking and shit, and it was just really awesome. And of course, every time you get to a new area, you just really want to explore everything, and, well, that's probably one of my main reasons why for loving it. Also, you just really can't go wrong with anything else about it there. And one quick little thing I'll mention is that I used to own a copy of the second game, but it was stolen from me, which really fucking sucks. Next up is Blast Corps, and this is actually a pretty fun game. Basically, you have to do different objectives, and you gotta go into different vehicles, you get this mech, you can also use a fire truck or a bulldozer and a bunch of other stuff, and for the most part, you really just gotta blow the shit out of everything. It's pretty fucking great. Next up is Buck Bumble, and this is a game I never even heard about until my brother gave it to me. In fact, I did a review of it, I think it was last year, I want to say. I can't remember exactly, but it wasn't too long ago. But either way, this is actually a pretty interesting game where it's kind of similar to a Star Fox, where it's a It's like a 3D like space shooter sort of thing, and but instead you're using like a bumblebee and stuff. It's actually pretty fun for what it is, although it's not nearly as good as Star Fox 64. But it's still a pretty good game, and it's not one that I hear too many people talk about. Next is Cruisin' World, and I haven't played this a whole lot, but from what I have played of it, it is actually a pretty fun arcade style racing game. But I can't remember the whole thing exactly there, but I do remember there being like quite a few tracks in the game. Next we have is Diddy Kong Racing. Hell yeah, this is a fucking great game. In fact, there's not a whole lot that I can say, but I love the whole like hub world of it, the fact that you can just drive around in it, and there's also the fact that you can just like change your vehicle to like different things, which is always interesting. Some pretty great tracks, and of course the battle mode in this one was actually pretty fun too. So yeah, this is definitely a great one. Next is Donkey Kong 64, and while I do think this is a really fun game, personally, it's just not nearly as good as the Super Nintendo ones, but it is still pretty good for what it is. I mean, it kind of does try to be more like a Banjo-Kazooie game, although I think this one came out first, if I remember correctly. I wish I don't. But either way, though, it is still a really fun one. Next up is Doom 64, and this is actually a pretty interesting version because this is actually not a port. This is actually just a straight up like original game with like a whole bunch of new maps and everything. And it's actually pretty great and enjoyable, and the controls still feel very nice for an N64 game. Next up is the Duke Nukem games, but let's talk about this one first. So this is Duke Nukem 64, and this one actually is a port of the PC game, but unfortunately, well, this game does play okay. There's like a lot of censorship involved. Like for one, like there's not as much like funny shit, and there's not as much blood. Of course, there's still enough blood to get an M rating, but not as much in comparison to the PC version. And well, before you start thinking it was like Nintendo's fault for censoring the game, it actually wasn't. It was actually the publisher, GT Interactive, that did the censoring, because this game was made during the time when Nintendo was done with trying to censor out like third-party games, like Mortal Kombat and stuff. I just wanted to say that in case you didn't know. And then this one is Duke Nukem 0 Hour. This one mostly plays a third-person shooter, but there are some parts in the game that does play in first-person, which is pretty nice. Although the multiplayer in this one also is mostly a first-person shooter game, and well, this game is pretty fun. I did found this game was really fucking hard. Like, I could, never get far into this game. But the one thing I really did like about the multiplayer was that not only did you get, a lot of pretty cool-looking maps, but also I really liked the fact that there was, different types of Duke Nukems to pick from. Like, you got, the regular one, then you got, Hollywood Duke Nukem, then there was Cowboy Duke, and a whole bunch of other ones. It was pretty interesting. But one thing I'll always remember with this game is that one multiplayer map in the Funhouse always had the most creepiest music ever. Next up is Fighter's Destiny, and personally I consider this to be probably one of the best fighting games you can get on the system. And I know that's not saying much because the system didn't really get a whole lot of fighting games, but still I actually found this one was pretty interesting. The way how it was made, where pretty much where all the rounds you get points and such, and while some of the characters are kind of generic, at least this game did have some pretty epic music, and it was actually for a pretty fun time. I did have a lot of good times with this game. Next is F-Zero, which is probably my favorite F-Zero game, because not only was this one just a whole lot of fun, but also has my favorite soundtrack ever. I'm not even fucking kidding. The music in this game just fucking rules, and there's just not a whole lot else I can say. Next up is Gauntlet Legends, and this is actually the second N64 game I ever owned, and it's also the first Gauntlet game I ever played, and yeah, this one is just fucking awesome. Definitely play this one with multiplayer, because honestly, this is probably one of the best multiplayer games you can probably ever play. Also, playing it single player is just brutally hard, so of course just having more people is just not only much more easier, but it's also just a lot more fun. Next up is Glover, and this is actually a game that I did a review on. It was actually the second review I've ever done, and yeah, that was also a pretty shitty one as well. But anyways though, this is actually an action platformer very similar to Super Mario 64, and as a kid I loved this game, but now that I've played it somewhat recently, I still think it is good. I still do have some pretty good times with it, but it's definitely not nearly as good as much as I said way back when. But either way though, I still did enjoy it for what it is, and also, well, I still think there needs to be a mod of this game where someone needs to change Glover's face to Danny Glover. Hardcore ECW Revolution, although I'm pretty sure it's actually supposed to be ECW Hardcore Revolution, but I just put it under H for whatever the hell reason. This is actually a pretty fun wrestling game. I don't think it's my favorite one on the N64, but I do think it is a pretty good one nonetheless. I mean, you do get a shitload of characters, which is great, and of course, you know, one of my favorite characters to use was Rob Van Dam because, well, he was awesome back then. Next is Iggy's Wrecking Ball. Now, I shit you not, I really can't say a whole lot about this game because I can't even remember anything about it. Hell, I don't even remember where I even got the game from. Next up is Jet Force Gemini, and I remember this being a pretty awesome game. It's basically a third-person shooter where you can take control of like a dude, then there's a chick, and then there's also a dog that has like a jetpack. It's pretty awesome stuff, and of course, you know, you gotta like help out this like one planet filled with koala bears because like there's a whole bunch of like ant people that are trying to take over it. It's actually pretty great. I really love the level environments, and also the multiplayer was pretty fun too. So yeah, this is actually a game I'm surprised like never really got a sequel, or if it did, then it's probably one I'm probably forgetting about. But either way, the game didn't get as big as I thought it would have been. And next up, we got an infestation of Mario games. So now let's take a look at them one by one. So you know, this is Mario 64. This is actually the very first N64 game I ever got. Got it on Christmas along with my N64, and you know what? I still freaking love this game. Now, the only issue I do have with it comparing it to today's standards is that, yes, the camera angles in this game do suck, but other than that, I really like everything else about it. So, yeah, I don't know. I think this is still a really great game to play. Mario Kart 64, you know, this is another really awesome game, probably one of my other favorite Mario Kart games, and, well, I just love pretty much everything about it there. Dr. Mario 64, this is actually one I remember renting as a kid, and I really loved it a whole bunch. It was actually the very first Dr. Mario game I ever played, and you know what, this game's just pretty great. Then we got the two Mario Parties, and that happens to be Mario Party 1 and 3. And 3 is actually my favorite one. This is actually the one I rented the hell out of as a kid. And I do really like 1 as well, but for some reason, I found that the computers in this one were really fucking cheap. Like, even if you put on the easiest difficulty, they always like to team up on you all the time, and it's just fucking bullshit. But other than that there, you still get some pretty good mini games and some pretty good maps as well. And lastly, the last Mario-related game that I have is Mario Tennis, and the first time I ever played this game was actually at a McDonald's, if you could believe it, because in case you don't know, there was actually a McDonald's around my old area where they actually had like little N64s. I remember one of them had this game, and the other one had, I think it was Mario Kart, I want to say, but I can't really remember right now. But either way, this was actually the first time I ever played this one, and ever since I played it at a McDonald's, I freaking loved it. MRC, which is a really damn generic game that I really can't say a whole lot of shit about, other than the fact that when you steer in this game, your car goes like super out of control. It's like unreal. Like, I don't know, it's just generic as shit. Next up is Nightmare Creatures. Now, this game is actually pretty decent, but unfortunately, it's not nearly as good as I thought it was going to be. Like, the controls in it are kind of awkward there, but once you do get used to them, it is actually a pretty decent game. But either way, one thing that is really awesome about this game is that it has some really good atmosphere and some really awesome like monster designs, and it probably has one of the best cheat codes ever, because in this game, you can actually play as the monsters. And they all actually play like really differently, which is really awesome. So yeah, I really wish more games had something like that. Next up is Battle Ogre 64, and this is actually a game I picked up very recently. I talked about it in my pickups video for the month of November, so I'm not going to say a whole lot about it here. But what I will say is that this is actually a pretty awesome game, and it's also very uncommon to see a game like this wound up on the N64, but thankfully, this game actually does play pretty great. Next is Perfect Dark, the other really awesome first-person shooter that Rare made, and yeah, there's not a whole lot else I can say about this game there, but yeah, it's just a really awesome game, really great characters, and of course, I also really like the menu music that plays. That was just awesome. And next up, we got the Pokemon games, and this one right here is Pokemon Stadium 1, and you know, this game is basically like just a typical Pokemon game, but it's just the direct battles, and you got a mini-game mode, which is always for a good time. Used to play the hell out of that one. But one thing that is really funny with this copy is that this exact copy is the same one that I used to rent all the time as a kid. And how I got this one was also pretty weird, because the video store that owned this game, it was actually one of those video stores that was like, it was a bigger chain, and usually whenever they get like a newer system in, like, you know, like the GameCube, PS2, and Xbox, they used to like sell out like all like the older stuff. And basically when they were doing that, I rented this game, like, I think about, like, 2 weeks, like, before they started doing that shit. So pretty much what happened after that is that I forgot to take the game back, and then we like moved out of like the area, and then it's like about like a year or two later when we moved back in the area, and you know, basically at that point it was like, oh well, you know what, no, might as well just keep the game. It was just kind of funny how that worked. And then this one is Pokemon Stadium 2, you know, the one that has like the back and the front are different colors. This is actually like the most distinct like N64 cartridge ever. And yeah, this one is just basically more or less of the same shit, but just, you know, more mini games and more Pokemon to use, and yeah. It's still like good time fun. And then this is one I actually got really recently, and that is Pokemon Puzzle League. And this was a game I also used to rent as a kid, and also, you know, I explained the story in my pickup video saying how this was like the one game I probably like. I was like the only one that rented it as a kid because, you know, like most kids wouldn't even rent a game like this, but either way though, I still really love it a whole lot. In fact, I actually just played the hell out of this one. Every time I play it, I just never want to put it down. Next up is Star Fox 64, which I don't really need to say a whole lot about the game, but it's just fucking awesome. And of course, you know, you can beat the game like super duper quickly. Next one is Super Smash Brothers. Okay, anyways, I'm pretty sure we all know what this fucking game is, but basically, while I do think this game is fucking awesome for the time, unfortunately, when you go back and playing this one, it just feels fucking weird. I don't know, it's just one of those games where if you go back and playing it, it just feels weird. But despite that though, I still have a lot of great times with this one, and even though unfortunately this exact copy that I'm holding is not my original one that I bought, because unfortunately that version was actually stolen by someone I knew. It was actually done by the same person that stole my Banjo-Tooie, which, you know, fucking sucks, but either way though, this copy was also given to me by my brother, so as again, I'm very thankful for that. Next up is Tarzan, and believe it or not, this game is surprisingly pretty good for what it is. Basically, it's a side-scrolling platformer, but you know, everything's all like 3D, but for the most part, it's mostly a side-scroller, and yeah, it's actually pretty decent for what it is. It's another example of like a movie game that's actually like not terrible. Next up is Tony Hawk Pro Skater, the very first one, and yes, this is actually a pretty fun game. I really enjoyed this one like when I was younger, although I used to rent it on PS1, but this version, I think I got it like last year, I want to say. Well, either way, this is actually a pretty enjoyable one, even though it is like very like basic compared to like most of the other Tony Hawk games that came out a little bit afterwards, but still a pretty good time. And these two games right here are ones that I also got really recently that I talked about in my November's Pickups video, and that is the Top Gear games, where basically, I'll keep it short and say that this one is the pretty typical generic racing game, but it's still actually pretty good, where this one is more about like the over-the-topness, and it's actually pretty awesome. Also, I just love the fact that you can use like really ridiculous cars, like, you know, like a taco car or like an N64 logo car. It's pretty great. Next we have is Turok 3, and I know you're probably thinking, well, what about Turok 2? Well, I do have that one, but I'm going to talk about that one in a moment there. But either way, this one is actually alright, but it's definitely not nearly as good as I was hoping it would have been, because for the longest time, I actually didn't know they made a Turok 3 on the N64. So when I found out about it, I was like, oh my god, like, that has to be awesome, right? Well, unfortunately, it's not as awesome as I was hoping it would have been. I don't know what it was. Like, it plays the same, but it's just like, some of the level designs in this one are just not as cool or interesting. I think that's part of one of the reasons why I didn't like this one as much. Next up is the last loose card that I have, and that is WWF Warzone. And I remember as a kid, I really loved this game, but playing it now, it's okay, I guess. I mean, like, I can get used to the controls, even though it takes me forever to remember everything, but other than that, though, I think it is an okay game, but definitely not the best wrestling game on the system. So now we're going to be moving on to the boxed games, and I don't really have a whole lot, mainly because I find a lot of the times, like, N64 boxes are usually in pretty shitty condition, or, you know, they're asking, like, way too much for, and it's really just a fucking hassle. So for the most part, I usually just stick to loose cards only, unless it's, like, for, like, the Genesis, where, you know, like, the boxes were actually good. But anyways, though, so now this first boss games that we have is Adine Chronicles, the First Mage, and I haven't played a whole lot of this game, but from what I have played of it, it's like an action RPG, and it seems alright, but some of the controls are kind of weird, but I don't know, I'll have to actually play this one through it more. So next up we have is Hexen, which, as you know, this is a first-person shooter that was originally on the PC, and it's a pretty badass game, and of course, you know, the cover of it also looks badass as hell too, so yeah, you know, you get to use like magic, you can also use like pretty brutal melee attacks, and it's just a really great first person shooter to have. And of course the multiplayer in this one is pretty great as well. Next is Turok 2 Seeds of Evil, and this is the one that like I freaking love a whole lot. Like this is not only the one that I played the shit out of, but also this one is just awesome. Pretty much just love just about everything about it. I mean, I love like the settings in the game, all the different weapons, the multiplayer mode was badass. I also love the fact that you can like change the textures of it. I used to put on the one called Mr. Happy, where basically all like the hallways are like all like, you know, grass, gotten like pink fluffy bunnies, and of course it's just funny seeing that when you're like fucking like just killing each other and like blood's going like everywhere and shit. Just a hell of a good time. I can really just talk about this game for hours. So next up, we got the last two games, and these are games that I'm pretty sure you guys probably know what they are. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure it out, and that happens to be The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. And well, there's not a whole lot that I can say. There already has been said like a bajillion times, but yes, this is indeed a great game, even though I still think Link to the Past is obviously like my all-time favorite, but still, this one is still a really good game regardless. And of course, we got Majora's Mask, which, you know, this game is good, but I definitely don't think it's not nearly as good as Ocarina of Time, or just compared to most other Zelda games. And the only reason why I say that is because, yes, the style of the game is really awesome. I really love it a whole bunch, and some of the like the dungeons are really cool, and some of like just some of the little areas that you go to and all that. And I also like the whole masks feature where you get to transform into different things. I really like that a whole lot. But the reason why it's one of my least favorite ones is because the motherfucking time limit. I swear to God, if this game didn't have that shit, then yes, this one could have been one of my favorite ones. But no, they just had to screw that part up. But either way, I still think it is a really good one, but I don't play it as much as some of the other Zelda games, but it is still pretty good regardless. And really, you just can't go wrong with most Zelda games for the most part. They're all good in their own different ways and blah 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 blah. So that's all the N64 games that I have as of 2016, and this is gonna feel like a really weird ass thing to say, but I'm actually almost done collecting for the N64 because I have all the essential games that I really want. Because as you know me, I'm not going for a complete set or anything like that. I only buy the games that interest me, and of course, there's not too many of them out there that I can really think of. I mean, yeah, there's Banjo-Tooie, which is like probably like one of my top ones there, because that's, you know, my old one was stolen, but yeah, other than that, though, there's only, like, a few other random-ass titles. Of course, a lot of them are, like, really cheap. There's only, like, one other one that's, like, kind of expensive or hard to find, but other than that there, yeah, like, I'm pretty much, like, set for all the ones that I really want, and I'm very happy for that. But either way, so with that being said, you know, talk about some of your favorite games on the N64, or some of your favorite memories, or anything related to that, and of course, the next one we're going to be doing it on is the Nintendo GameCube. Anyways, with that being said, thanks for watching and commenting, and have yourselves a great day.